Hey, good morning, y'all. Welcome. I'm tired. Like, straight up, I'm tired. We didn't get home till after 3 in the morning this morning, and you can hear. So, I treated myself to a London fog. Good morning. Let me go ahead and say, that was an awesome weekend. So, big thank you, Fort Circle Games, Kevin over at Fort Circle Games, for having James and myself down. James was a great fill-in for Jess. So, James, I know you're working, which you're a trooper for that today, but it was great having you come down. And big thanks to Kevin for having us down to DC. So, for those that don't know, Kevin doesn't promote it real huge, but it's a it's basically a war game convention, a historical simulations game convention, if you will. And so we went down on Wednesday and just came back at just really late last night. Took train down, took train back. Apparently while we were gone, there was an earthquake up here. I had no clue until we were on train home yesterday. So there's that. Y'all tell me what you want to hear about. Now I have, obviously, let's fix that. There we go. I have a list of all the games that I played, a lot of the conversations, and I'm happy to talk about all that. If y'all want to hear about the food, if y'all want to hear about the ball game, whatever y'all want to talk about, this is a you drive it type thing. Because I don't want to do it chronologically, because I'm going to talk about the ball game first and all that, and then people that are here to just talk about the games aren't going to like that. You get the idea. So, hit me. Yeah, no, I prefer trains over the planes. You don't have to go through security. You don't have to worry about checking bags. The seats are bigger. No turbulence. Now, there is some, back and forth. And, you might get delayed just sitting there for an hour and a half. But that happens with planes anyway. So, wasn't the end of the world. Just tired. That's all. Where's the video from throwing out the first pitch? I'll circle back to that, but unfortunately I wasn't allowed. I'll talk about that later. Remind me after we talk about games, Chris. Mataba, hey, welcome back. What time is it in Tehran right now? My guess. I'm gonna say it's like 11 o'clock at night, y'all's time. That's my guess. I'm curious. Hey. Oh wow, there's a lot here. Okay, so I'll try and keep up. All right, we're gonna talk games first, and then we'll probably talk conversations, interactions, embarrassing moments for me, and then we will talk anything else y'all want to know. How's that? All right? That includes you, James. I see you. Worst Age of Steam map. No such thing as worst. Yeah. Cool. All right. So here's the list of games that I played. We'll start with that. How about there? So in order of which we played them. So it's a 3-day convention. We were there for like 2 3/4 days, almost 3 full days. We got down there Wednesday, did sightseeing on Thursday, and the ball game on Thursday, and the reception and all that stuff. But on Friday, started out Night Witches, which is upcoming design by Liz Davidson of Beyond Solitaire and David Thompson, co-designs. And that's going to be published by Fort Circle. That was a lot of fun. It's a logistics and resource management bag drawing game with the theme of the Russian Night Witches, which awesome. Love it. Can't wait to play it. Like, obviously we played a demo of it and really enjoyed it, but that was first up. Then I hosted a 4-player game of Vimar. We'll talk about that, I'm sure. That went 2 cards short of the full game, which that was awesome. And 3 of the players, it was their first game, so that was good. Then on Saturday, we walked in the door, and Cole Worley came up, gave me a hug, said, "Hey, we have 2 seats for ARCs. You want to jump in?" So I was like, let's do it. So James and I busted out a game of ARCs with Chris and Wendy from the Dice Tower that were there. So that was cool. With Cole overseeing the game and kind of GMing the game. And Drew also helped out. Drew was there from Whirligig as well, Cole's brother. So that was cool. After that, I got into a demo playtest game of Coast Watchers from Volko and, well, I should back up, ARCs. Hold on, let me see. Vimar's already out. ARCs, Cole Worley, Leader Games. Coast Watchers, upcoming game from Volko and GMT. Definitely was great. Played that with Bill Simone, and it's really set up as a 2-player hidden block game, and I'll go into details about it later, but we were playing it 3v3. Well, we were actually playing it 2v3, and that was really cool, and yeah, that was a lot of fun. Then got in a game of Twilight Struggle South Asian Monsoon. It was me versus a car with the Jasons watching. No pressure there, playing Twilight Struggle in front of Jason Matthews. And then Jason Carr, who is the lead of development at GMT Games. He was there showing that and a couple others. And so we played a game of that. So obviously it's a co-design between the 2 Jasons, Carr and Matthews, and published coming out from GMT. Then on Sunday morning, yesterday, was the last scheduled thing that I had, and that was a scheduled demo, playtest, whatever, what have you, of Cross Bronx Expressway. And Cross Bronx Expressway, I had heard that a lot of people were like, if you get a chance to play that, I want to. That was probably my most asked, hey, can you please try this and report back type thing. So that's being designed by Non-Breaking Space. We'll talk about that name in a little bit. And published by GMT. Developed. So the interesting thing here is the way GMT is doing their development. So I got to hang out and meet the developers as much as the designers for both Cross Bronx Expressway as well as Twilight Struggle, South Asian Monsoon. So both of those are coming out, I think, this year. I know Cross Bronx Expressway is supposed to be. I believe Twilight Struggle is supposed to be as well, but more on that later. Also, Coast Watchers probably won't be till 25 is my guess. And then Sebastian Bay, for those of you that aren't on social media, is a Marine who works as a professional wargame designer, and not the war games that we play, but for the DoD and the Navy and Marine Corps and such. And he also is a professor at Georgetown. That's it. And he had a couple of students there. And one of the students, the night before, Saturday night, designed a really surprisingly great little deduction hidden game called Open Windows. We're going to talk about that one. Then circled back to Liz Davidson and David Thompson, and we played what's going to be their second baby, aka their second co-design. Working title is Dame Blanche, or maybe it's Dame. I think it's Dame, but it's a working title for it. It's a spy bag builder from loosely set in Belgium and Austria, Belgium. I think Austria, World War I. And finally, we finished out the convention playing Pray Another Day, which is a release game and not anything close to a war game. I don't know the designer, I apologize, but published by Pegasus Spiel, and that a lot of people think is going to be on the short list for Spiel des Jahres, and that was legitimately great. So we'll talk about all those. So what do y'all want to hear about first? And I will circle back to all the questions, but I want to see what y'all... Oh! You know what, James? You're going to have to list all the games that we played on the train down. I forgot about those. Sorry. All right, so the first one was, let's see, Gary, you're 3 games deep, 4, into Vimar right now. How many rounds did each one go? I'm getting my first place soon. So, okay, we'll talk about the game that, is that the only published game other than Pray Another Day that I played on those? Yes, that is. Because Ark's technically, it's finished, but not out yet, but... All right. I did not play Hunt for Blackbeard because I knew I had my review copy, so we did not. All right, so we'll start with Vimar. Obviously, we streamed it a couple of times. Oh, good. And so I played it 4 times. I believe twice ended within the first 2 rounds with the KPD winning, the communists winning. With councils. The third time playing finished with the KPD. In fact, yeah, the KPD winning on councils. That went into the 5th round. And then this most recent play with 3 new players. Myself, having played, I played as Zentrum and having 3 plays under my belt. I taught it, ran it, as well as played it. That went 2 cards short of the full 6 rounds. Took us about 5.5 hours, right? We started, let's see, we started at 4. We ended right about 6 hours with the teach. It ended with a DMVP regime victory. However, I will say that all 4 factions legitimately had real chances to either win the game earlier and didn't, or were on the cusp of winning it late and just barely missed. So that was probably the most rewarding game of Vimar that I've played yet, and was pretty fantastic, legitimately. And we ran into a couple of situations that I had not encountered before. First off, by the end of round 1 and going into round 2 and through round 2, James was playing the other government, the KPD or the communists, the DMVP, Zentrum, and I can't remember the red player, the main Democratic Party. I apologize. And he and I had basically, through a mixture of good rolling, but also I think we played well and whatnot, had the government in stellar shape. There was one time, and it was in the 5th round, that we almost lost it to anarchy, meaning too many things in the DR box. But first, second round was smooth sailing, which is completely different than every one of our games that I have played other than that. The DMVP was struggling hard through 90% of the game and came back to win. I love seeing that. The KPD had some really rough rolls and for placing councils and placing, I can't think of like the half councils, the first step to getting a council out. They had really, really bad luck. They probably rolled 20, 25 dice and needed a 6 and never once rolled a 6. So that was pretty unlucky. As Zentrum, I was in the government almost every round. At the end of the 5th round, I was chancellor and ended up with no seats at the end of the round in Parliament. And that was an edge case, we thought, and we couldn't figure out. Both the radicals, so the KPD and the DMVP, both refused coalitions, and so we thought that I was for the SPD. Thank you, John. The and Adamir. We thought that I was forced to be in a coalition with the SPD as Zentrum, even though I had no seats in Parliament. And somebody had run into that same situation, asked that. Matthias Kramer had said, no, it's a minority cabinet. So the 6th round, we had a minority cabinet with just the SPD. Okay. I was competitive in victory points as Zentrum. I was lagging, but not like way lagging. And so in the 6th round, I wasn't part of the government. My goal was to try and fill the DR box, because if I could get it to overflow, then the SPD, who was ahead by 8 victory points, would lose those 8 points to Anarchy, and then we would tie in the victory. We had 3, everybody but the KPD, I believe, had party base for the NSDAP for the brown shirts. Mine was voluntary, some were not. And as Zentrum for the 5 points for the flag dispute. At the very end, in the last round, I hammered down hard the KPD. I was able to remove 2 of their councils. They were on the cusp of winning, had a roll to win it, failed, and then I was able to remove 2 of their councils on subsequent turns. By doing that, into the 6th round, the DMVP positioned themselves that because I was focused on them, they were able to come in and got a successful 4th or really 3rd regime. It was the one in Berlin. Had they not, I think I was going to be able to cause anarchy in the government and cause the SPD, but not for sure. It was going to be close. It was epic. It was absolutely a fantastic experience, both from the experience of playing it, the narrative of the game, the how tense it got, and everybody was into it, and it was a fantastic experience. So my suggestion is, if you're playing it with 4 new players, to anybody that's watched the streams, maybe play as Zentrum and really force the SPD to do the heavy lifting for taking care of the government, handling, knocking down the stuff, and do the things and get points where you can as Zentrum, while also maintaining, as part of the government, making sure the radicals aren't getting out of hand. And yeah, that was. But once everybody gets that first game under the belt and you kind of see, then knock yourself out, play whatever faction, and it was great. Do I feel that Zentrum is probably the hardest to play and to have a victory? Yes, I do. But I don't necessarily see it as a balance issue, even if they're imbalanced. That makes sense? Like, yeah. It was great. It was a really wonderful experience. I was exhausted. James and I both were just spent. We played through dinner, and so we ended up going out and grabbing a late bite to eat, which was fantastic. Intersperse a little food here. Kevin, the host of Fort Circle, amazing job, and again, thank you. He sent a email, hey, here are some restaurants that I really, really recommend. One of which was Ben's Chili. Never heard of Ben's Chili? If you're from the DC area, I'm sure you know Ben's Chili. It's been around since the mid-50s. Apparently, in the 68 riots, Kevin told the story that Ben's was neutral ground between the rioters and the police. There was an unwritten agreement. The police would not arrest the rioters, and the rioters would leave Benz alone, and like this is hallowed ground, and everybody got together, they ate, and then went and did their thing outside of that. Proper late night, awesome. Had chili cheese fries, had a chili dog, and a chili burger. And the chili burger was because the security dude that was kind of standing there hanging out said he had one every Friday night. It's his go-to. Man, did not disappoint. It was fantastic. So there was that. Okay. All right. So that is Vimar. Hopefully that answers your question and gives you a good experience on that. All right. Let me catch up now. Thank you, Murr. Pray Another Day, designed by Matthew Dunstan and Brett Gilbert. There you go. Oh, hey, Kevin's here. That food. Oh, bro, I'm gonna talk about the Rooster place. I think it's Rooster and Whiskey. Was that the name of the place? I don't even remember. I took a picture, but oh my God. Yes, I will talk about that. Let's see. Top 5 heavy games. You're gonna have to wait for my top 50 for that. Sorry, Gary. If the KPD had better dice rolls, do you think the game would have ended sooner, John asked. No, I think we would have focused more on them than other things. I think the game plays out differently. Because if the KPD succeeds, then at that point, or on a couple of those rolls, they have more councils out. And both the SPD and Zentrum are more focused on getting them knocked down than we are getting victory points, boosting up the economy. And because his rolls were so bad, that we were able to focus, it's the economy, stupid. We were able to focus on the DR box almost exclusively. And man, we had Germany in great shape because of that. So I don't think KPD would have won earlier. I think it plays out differently because the focus would have been different. All right. Let's see. Adam Namir says, ruling party being thrown out of parliament come the next election. It happens more often than you think in Europe. Fair point. Seattle Sasquatch sounds a lot like playing Warhammer. Check 25 dice for a 6 and not having any come up. Nathaniel. I think it was Nathan. I apologize. I don't think he's going to watch, but in case. He took it like a champ, and he was like, oh my God, like really? Like he wasn't whiny, he wasn't like bitching and moaning. He took it like a champ, and it was awesome. So kudos to him for that. Did the NSDAP become a big factor? They became a factor. And here's a question that we didn't encounter, or I'm curious about, but I don't know the answer to. And if somebody has the rule book, you can look it up. But the NSDAP had 2 or 3 seats in Congress, in Parliament. So the 2 questions on that. A, I assumed that at the end of the round, they're immune from the reduction if over the 24 seats, number one, I think. And the other thing I don't know is when factoring in majorities for Parliament and for winning, if you're the DMVP or the KPD, do they just count as they're not seats? Not Nazis, but not seats? Meaning like those seats don't exist. I assume the answer is no, so you still got to have the absolute majority. But I do know that there were a number of cards because we were 2 cards short of the 6th round. I had 2 cards that could add seats, and there were some really nasty cards in the brown deck that could add NSDAP seats and workers out there, or party base. And I know that James had at least 1. So it could have theoretically ended. If we chose to go that route, we wouldn't have. But yeah, it could have been a big factor in those last couple of turns. So there's that. Seattle Sasquatch says, I love how you're playing a game turns into a story. That's what I do. I'm glad. Makes the theme a much more interesting component to gaming. I totally agree. Yes. Hey, Skirmish Tactics. Joining late. Just wanted to say it was great to meet you in person. Same. There were a number of folks I wasn't able to meet. It's not a big convention. I saw everybody multiple times. It's all one room. But there's only so many hours in a day, and it just, yeah. Like, I didn't get a chance to try half of the prototypes that I wanted to. But again, that's just nature of the beast. Rooster and Owl. That's it, Kevin. You can Google that, and we'll talk about it later if you're so inclined, folks. But anyway, let's see. Oh, how was the game of who won the president's race? Yeah, Lincoln won because it was National Burrito Day, so Teddy was wrapped up like a burrito. It was pretty funny. It was I picked Teddy before I knew he was wrapped up like a burrito. James picked Lincoln. Lincoln won. So, right. All right. So that is Vimar. Okay. So, James, I did not see you list all the games that we played on the way down. Oh, San Juan, 13 Minutes, and The Hunt. And then we played Votes for Women on Rally the Troops on the way home. I'll add those. Thank you. I appreciate that. So, I'm going to make a little note to myself. A moment. Okay, there we go. Cool. All right. What is the next game that you guys wanted to hear from? Let's see, or hear about. You know what? I'm just going to hit them all. So here we go. Let's just... Okay, Night Witches I talked about a little bit. Being able to hang out with Liz and David was pretty great. We hung out more at the end than the front, but it was still cool to experience Night Witches with them. And I'm really excited about it. So the premise, I kind of already touched on. But we played it 4 players. It was me and James and Meeple Lady, and I'm not sure who else was in the other group. You have 2 crews of planes. And it plays solo to 4 players. If you play solo, you're controlling both planes. 2 players, 1 each, and 3, you get the idea. And you're having to, you have missions. It is a group, and I apologize if I get the numbers wrong. I believe it's 15 scenarios. It's 10 or 15 scenarios, and you play it as a campaign. And depending on how you do in a campaign dictates the difficulty of the next, or of one chapter, if you will, going into the next chapter, the next scenario. There we go. How you did in this one and how you've done cumulatively between for all the ones before dictates the difficulty of the next one you're playing, and then the next one, and then depending on at the end of the campaign, what's your final score. It's a really clever system. It is all about mitigating the randomness in your bag, as well as the thematic aspects of the Night Witches. Now, the Night Witches, apparently we found out, the women were about 30% of all the squadrons that did these bombing runs against the Nazis in World War II, against the Germans. And yeah, we had some feedback as to the thematic aspects of it, and they seem receptive to it. They have a cultural, I forget the term, I apologize, but not cultural, a consultant, there you go, for this, and they're going to bounce our ideas off of her to see if they can come up with it. And what we thought, and here I'll just go ahead and talk about this, is so you have 5 crews, and the crews are basically on one card, it is a pilot and a navigator. And these were, if you lose all 5 crews throughout the course of your campaign, the game ends and you lose. And James and I thought that it would be a little bit more emotionally and thematically involving if maybe on the backside of the crew cards that, or crew, yeah, you know, each set, it's like, I don't know, it's Mary and Irene. Mary is a mother of two. She's married to Dimitri, you know, and they're fictional because you don't want to use, I get that. But then, look, oh, Mary and Irene died. Okay, or whatever. I lost the crew. Instead of it, oh, I just lost the crew. I'm down to 4. Now it's like, oh, man, I lost Mary and Irene. Great. Their kids are going to grow up as orphans. Oh, that really, right? It kind of gives a pall over, but it makes you more emotionally invested instead of, oh, I just lost 1 of 5. And I thought that was yeah, I just thought that would be a more, and James also, that it would just be a more immersive experience. And I think that if you're wanting to have a theme like this, and you, even if it's not 100% true to history, this is the mission that this crew did, it still is going to have an impact. And I think that's a positive thing. So that was Night Witches. It was really good. Both crews succeeded, and there are 3 levels of success on a given mission, and like the top, middle, and bottom. And we succeeded on the middle and both crews successfully lived. So that was cool. Yeah. Oh, Zivka. Yeah, Zivko says, by the way, there's a Night Witches tabletop RPG in case anyone's interested. All right. Cool. So there's that. I covered Vimar pretty well. Arcs. Now, I know a lot of people are going to want to hear about Arcs. So here's the thing, and this is by no means disparaging. I think Arcs is going to be really good. I think a lot of people are going to like it. But I think that's the game that had the least impact on me of the weekend. I think... why is that? Why? Let me think. Like, it was great to see Cole. I'm a huge fan of Cole's games, obviously. Chris and Wendy were amazing. That was a lot of fun. Chris utterly eviscerated us. Wendy was the warmonger, as was James towards me, and then there were paybacks happened. Mutually assured destruction happened in that. But I know nothing about Arcs coming into the game other than, hey, there was this really big Kickstarter. It's been 2 years. The game has changed, and now it's ready. And I know there's some trick-taking involved, and I know it's like this spacey theme. I'm not kidding. That's my level of knowledge coming into Arcs. I didn't read anything else about it. Never played it, never played a playtest, never saw it, nothing. Absolutely not. Okay? Yeah. So, I came into Arcs probably further behind than almost all of y'all that are interested in the game. I know a lot of y'all probably backed it, whatever. So, I came into it really not knowing, I knew it was Leader Games, Cole, and I knew Kyle Farron did the artwork. And you can tell. It's very clear. He has a style. It's great. All right. Is it because Arcs is less emotionally impactful than a lot of the historically based games you played on the weekend? Oh, that's a fair point, Joe. So let me look at this. Night Witches, Vimar, Coast Watchers, Twilight Struggle, but for reasons outside the game, and I'll talk about that. Cross Bronx Expressway, fair. Open Windows, yes, that is almost that is probably 90% of the reason. Yeah, good call, Joe. Thank you. Less emotionally impactful for reasons either in the game themselves or for the discussions around the game that happened, or I will say that and Pray Another Day. Those are the two published games, as a matter of fact, that also, it was more about the people than it was the game. Y'all know what I'm saying. You get together, you're having a good time, you're cutting up, you're gathering friends, either new friends, old friends, whatever it is. Cole and I have known each other for a long, long time at this point. And like Chris and Wendy, we were cutting up, we were having a good time. It was a lot of fun. So it was fun in that way, but not around the game. Like the game, you're not emotionally invested. Pray Another Day is a silly little, I clearly cannot choose the wine in front of me type game. But again, that was me, James, Liz Davidson, who I know for a number of years, David Thompson, who I got to know and is just good people. Tor, and I apologize, I don't remember Tor's last name. He's the guy who created Rally the Troops. I'd never heard of it, and I have a funny story about this. I do now. So he created that. And then, and I forget, there is a writer and movie critic, I think he said, that was there that I met. And I forget his name. I'm horrible about this. But it was such a good time, just the interactions. But it wasn't about the game. It had no emotional impact. So I think that's totally right. Yeah, awesome. Drapey, I'll try and circle back and get that to the end. By the way, y'all, I have a hard stop at 2:30 today because I got to go pick up a kid from school. At 2:20 today, I got to go pick up a kid from school, drop him off at work, and then get to the eclipse. So I apologize, but 2:20. Set an alarm for 2:20 p.m. Hard stop. Normally, I want to make sure I answer everybody's questions, but that may be an exception today, so I apologize. Okay. But yeah, I think that's why ARCS was less emotional, like it was less impactful. That said, brief overview. So you get a hand of cards, different suits. The lead suit, and I'm not conveying it perfectly, but the lead suit, the lower the number, the stronger the action. The suit dictates what actions you can take, whether it's create ships, build ships or build bases, move ships, battle, or bid for cards, claim bid cards, stuff like that. Okay. Gather resources, which are victory point scoring things, stuff like that. So if you have leading the suit, you play a card, and then you take whatever the number of actions within that you can take. Pretty straightforward there. In addition to that, you may have a rule breaker that allows you, after you play the card, but before you take your action, you can do X, whatever X is, because you have a card or you have a special ability that allows you to do that. Fine. Then, after you've taken your actions, you can then basically zero out the bid number of your card. So they're numbered 1 to 7, 1 being a stronger, and you can zero it out and then choose a scoring objective at the end of the hand. And the scoring objective means, hey, this thing is going to score you X amount of points. Whoever has the most of this thing, first and second. If tied, it's the lower number. So meaning if first is 9, second's 4, if you're tied for first, you both score 4, that type thing. All right. And if you're both tied for second, nothing. So you lead, whatever. You do not have to follow suit. If you follow suit, you must play higher. So this is where zeroing that number out comes. So if you played a 5, people can only play a 6 or a 7 in that suit. You can play offsuit. If you play offsuit, it has to be higher. But you play offsuit, you can only take one action on the card that you played. So not following suit means you don't get to do the full value, and you only get to do one, but you get to do one on the suit you played. Okay. The other thing you can do is play any card face down. Lower, higher, doesn't matter. It's face down. And then you get to do one action and one action only of the lead suit. Okay, easy enough. The second thing you can do, in addition to, though, when you lead, you can't do this. But when you anyone else, whether you followed suit, whether not, whoever had played the highest of the suit is going to win the trick, and they lead. Only the leader can choose a scoring objective for that round. If anybody in turn order, so if I led and then say James plays next, whether he plays of the same suit or face down suit, he can play a second card out of his hand face down. So whether he played one face down and another one face down, or if you played one face up and another face down, that wins the trick. No matter, even if somebody plays a 7, which that will win the trick because that's the highest number. Only one person can win a trick, obviously. So if somebody plays that face down one, the second card, nobody else can do it. Even if they play a 7, they're not going to win the trick. So you do that, and everybody plays one, and then you do that. And you round around. You start with, I think it's a hand of 6 cards. So you might become asymmetric in that if you're playing another card on top, you have one less card to play. So it could be, and this happened to where I didn't do that, or I was able to draw an extra card. I was able to play the last trick by myself. Choose a scoring objective, that type thing. So really clever mechanism. It worked really well. And it's pretty simple. Like, I was overwhelmed. Y'all might not know this, but I don't learn games exceptionally well at the beginning. It takes me half a game for things to click in really any capacity. I am the worst. It's not that I'm not paying attention. I heard the rules. I understand it. I just don't absorb everything. So I'm like, that's why I like going last in the first round, so I can kind of watch what people do. And so I had to go first, and I'm like, okay, what can I do? And so I asked a lot of questions early on, and God bless Cole for being patient. But we got rocking and rolling, and James and I kind of hurt ourselves early by kind of fumbling. And Chris and Wendy were savants. They picked it up really quick and did really well. But overall, really smooth, really good. And I'm jonesing to play it some more. So just because I said it wasn't an emotional attachment, it was still a really good game. I'm excited. The good news, Cole said we're probably going to get a copy here in next couple of weeks. Next couple of weeks, I'm going to be at the gathering, so the timing of that works out well. There may be a copy at the gathering to where I can play more of it, and we can stream it that much sooner. So there's that. It's not going to be sponsored. It's not going to do anything like that, because again, that was 2 years ago. But I know that there are other things, and I don't know that Cole and I talked about working together, whether it's Leader Games or Whirligig. I don't know what's announced and what's not, and so I will just say that we will be working with both companies on future projects. And let's just say maybe some of their catalog is already published, and maybe there may be more things coming out for some of those games. And if so, we might be working together on that. That's all I'll say to that. All right. So there you go. Let's see what else. Oh, hey, Jason Carr's here. Hi, Jason. Oh, we're getting to that. We haven't gotten to it. So Jason Carr is the head of development at GMT, also co-designer of Twilight Struggle, South Asian Monsoon. We're going to talk about that here in 2 more games. Yeah, cool. All right, you know what? Yeah, no, I want to do this kind of chronologically because the narrative of the weekend makes sense that way. All right, cool. I did see Molly House. Unfortunately, I did not get a chance to play it. Y'all, in a perfect world, Kevin makes the convention at least one more day. Like, do it Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. I mean, ending on Sunday, that's pretty, yeah, I get that. But just saying, it just ain't enough hours in a day. There are so many games that I wanted to try. Like, I didn't get a chance to play Lennon's Legacy. And the next bad thing I hear about that game will be the first. There was a demonic, cult game there by Mar that I wanted to try that I didn't get a chance. There was, and I'm not even going to try and pronounce it, the designer of the V game from GMT, the Indian set back in the 13th, 14th century, I think. that was there. The designer was there. I didn't realize it was the designer. Idiot. Didn't get a chance to try that. Ben Hall was there. Made a huge ass of myself there. That's a funny story. I'll talk about that. Didn't get a chance to play any of his games. Ray, God, what's, I can't think of Ray's. He was there. He had this, what was it? Labor game that Ray Farrell, I think. He was there. He left early, so I didn't get a chance to try his game. Oh my God. I'm so disappointed in that. And did not get a chance to try Molly House. Yeah. So yeah, one more day, Kevin. 4 days. I'm just saying, I need that extra day to be able to play more. I'm going to complain that that's not going to be long enough. But any more than that, and I'm just saying, 4 days. It's the right number. Okay, cool. Let's see. Oh, hey, Brooks is here. Hi, Brooks. So, Brooks is a patron. So it's awesome to meet y'all. Cause yay, thank you for the support. But I met Brooks. I saw again, Michael, Grayson, and a number of other folks that enjoy the channel. It's always nice to hear. I appreciate it. Pretty amazing when you have like people like Jason Carr, Jason Matthews, Volko, say nice thing, and Harold Buchanan, Mark Herman. It was cool. Mark Herman, he's like, Edward, came in, gave me a big hug. That felt good. That was nice. But when they say nice things about the work we do, like, I'm like, wow, you're Volko, you're Mark, you're Harold, you're Jason. Like, wow, shucks, thanks. Right? And I'm like huge fans of yours. So that was cool. I don't fanboy, but it still feels good, right? And I like, it was a who's who there. I actually got a picture of like all the designers, and I'll post it, half of which I still don't know, but I want to. Awesome experience. Anyway, hopefully that was enough about ARX. ARX looks great. I'm looking forward to playing more of it, and hopefully, like explaining how that works was pretty cool. And then obviously there's combat. You're building bases, you're destroying, you're getting resources and scoring things. All that is really common. Nothing about how that worked. The dice aspect was cool. That's one thing I will talk. The last thing I'll talk about with ARX is there are there are really 2 levels of dice, and then there's a third die when you're attacking cities. The blue dice are boring. They're 50-50s. You might hit, you might not, but they're safe. The red dice are way stronger. You can do more damage, but then you can get damage. And the way battles work, the attacker just assigns all damage to both sides, and they choose all of it, which I really, really liked. It's a very simple, clean, and easy to go through. And by the way, it's a gorgeous day here. The windows are open, so if you hear the sirens, I'm sorry. So the dice mechanism was, you've seen before, and the rest of the game, all of it's going to be very, hey, you're going to bid on cards, you're going to claim these cards, and they do cool rule-breaking stuff. Some of that you might not see, the specifics of that. But all of that is pretty, I'm not going to say basic, but it's going to be familiar to you. The card mechanism, the bidding, and the trick taking, that is the hook of the game, and it's badass. It's really good. So, yay. All right. Yes, Ray Farrell. Thank you, Kevin. All right, awesome. Ray Farrell. Time of Crisis, No Gods, No Masters, Sword of Rome. Like, I didn't realize it was that. Like, I didn't put 2 and 2 together. Like, at least I didn't make an ass of myself in front of him like I did Ben. That's okay. But I'm like, dude, it's time. I learned this after he'd left. So Kevin, your job is to get Ray there longer next year, please. All right, thanks. All right, so that's ARX. Now let's talk Coast Watchers. Kevin told me, Kevin is Kevin Bertram, runs Fort Circle Games, put on the convention and had us down there. Yeah, so I was a guest, full disclosure. By the way, I'm going to be doing a sponsored stream of this. He's not paying me for it, but I figure that's in as a thank you for having us down for the convention. So there's that. Full disclosure, hey, not sucking up. I'm just grateful. So thank you. All right. Vijayanagara. That's the name of it. Thank you. Savario Spagnoli. Thank you, Jason. So, okay, funny story before I get into Coast Watchers. Sorry. It was the end of the day yesterday, and I didn't have time to get into a game. And Savario is there. I don't recognize him. I don't know it's him. And his name isn't familiar enough to me to where I didn't, like when I see his name tag, I don't put two and two together. Idiot. So I see him setting up Vijayanagara. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. I'm trying. Anyway, I see him. And again, at conventions, I'm used to just seeing people set up games. There was Star Wars Rebellion. Pretty sure that the designer of that wasn't there. You get the idea. So just setting up the game. Cool. And there was like this awkward moment to where like I was like, hey. He's like, hey, I like your show. I appreciate what you do. Hey, thanks. Thought he was just a dude. Just a dude. Nope. It was Savario. And the fact that that's like coin in 90 minutes, 2 hours, I might have, could have squeezed that in. And I'm like, missed opportunity. But afterwards, I realized, oh, that was, my bad. Idiot. All right. So, there you go. There you go. And JT says Ray Farrell also did Barracks Emperors, which might be the most innovative trick taker out there. See? See what I'm saying? Didn't realize it. Promise I won't make the same mistakes next year. Or I'll be more knowledgeable. That's a good way to put it. All right. So Kevin told me you can host games, right? You're the one saying, hey, I want to play there's tons of open gaming. But there's also a sign-up thing that you can do. And he opened it up at a certain time before the convention, whatever. And Kevin told me ahead of time, make sure you get into one of Volko's playtests. I mean, don't have to twist my arm. It's Volko. Okay. So, before the sign-ups opened up, I read about everything. There's Hunt for Blackbeard. There were 3 games that he was running, all based off this new system that he, I think, created. I think that's the right term here. And the 3 was Hunt for Blackbeard. There was, it starts with a D. You know what, Jason, you're here. You'll be able to tell me. It starts with a D. So, Blackbeard is Fort Circle. There was Coast Watchers, which is coming from GMT. And the other one is set in Verdun, which is airships. And they're all about this either hidden movement, Blackbeard, or Coast Watchers was the most interesting from a thematic standpoint, which is down in Guadalcanal area, where you have people that are literally all you're doing, you're not engaging, you're watching the coast for Japanese activity for the IJA and the IJN and reporting back to it, right? Draken, that's it, thank you, which is, dirigibles at Verdun and such. Yeah, there you go. So it was, I'll be honest, it's not that Blackbeard doesn't interest me. I'm just more interested. And so I was like, Coast Watchers, like you're just reporting back on enemy movement. That's the game. Okay, that sounds awesome. So signed up, got James and I in, but there were when we went to go play it, there were 6 people at the table with Volko, and he was already talking about it. And we were like, we don't want to interrupt, so we weren't going to play it. But I was really bummed because I was like, I really want to get in on this. And one of the guys looked back at us because we're kind of hovering, listening to Volko. Volko is the most unassuming dude if you've never encountered him. He's I don't know, probably in his 50s, 60s, probably 60s is my guess. Just gray hair, he's a smaller stature dude, soft-spoken, passionate, but soft-spoken. It seems, and he worked as a intelligence officer back in the day and all of this. And so he's telling like the theme of the game, and we're hanging on every word, we're leaning in. And one of the guys is like, "Are y'all in this game?" Because I'm not, I'm just here watching. Like, yeah. Normally I'm like, "No, you're fine." No, on this I was like, "Yeah," because I didn't want to miss this. So he got up. That was nice. But James didn't want to be as rude as I was. And so he sat in, and Sebastian Bay was there watching and listening as well. And Bill Simone was on the other side. And so what the theme here is, like I said, it's Guadalcanal. And one side is the Imperial Japanese Army and Navy. And the other side are the Allies. I played as the Allies. And you are trying to, there are, God, how do you describe this? This is going to be amazing to stream. I can't wait to do this. Yeah, this was cool. So it's Guadalcanal. It is Bougainville. It is, and there's other, the northern part of the map I can't think of off the top of my head, but that area. So it's a bunch of blocks, and there are chits next to them, which are Japanese chits, and it's all hidden information from the both sides. They start out, the majority of the chits that are adjacent to these blocks. The blocks are information for us. Those are either palm trees, i.e. empty, or they are coast watchers, and refugees or somebody that you need to rescue or something like that. So all they see are the blank block side on the Japanese side. All I see are my coast watchers or our coast watchers. And then the chits are either trees and they're empty, or they are troop movements. They could be ships, they could be bombers, they could be they could be some kind of IJA, IJN things that we want to report back. Okay, so that's the board setup, all right? Then you get a predetermined hand of cards. Now, I should say, I believe that there are 15 scenarios. It's 10 or 15. I'm getting the numbers mixed between all the games. So it's 10 or 15 scenarios, and you can play them either mano y mano, or you could legitimately do it 2 a side, 3 to a side. It's on the honor system. A lot of this is. And so if you're playing with somebody, just don't be that person. So how it works is we played, I think, scenario 5. And from that, you have a couple of cards that are known cards that both sides know you have. Then you have some random cards. And then there are 2 sets of 2 cards. And secretly, as the allies, you choose one of those 2 sets. Now, the Japanese player knows that again, after you've played this and you're familiar with the game, obviously they didn't know that because this is a play test and none of us have played it. But this comes into play as we go along. We chose this one that there's a choke point down in Bougainville. And when we play one of the cards, you have to reveal that card. They would know in subsequent games that if we play this card, they know this other card. So they know that Bougainville is a choke point that we're going to be heavily invested in. So they might want to choose a different path for their missions. All right, so we get some cards. And these cards are going to either allow you to do actions or facilitate specific actions. And the Japanese, they're trying to run operations. They only run operations once per game, and by game, I mean per scenario. It's about the build up to it, and then whenever they trigger or fire the operation, that signifies the end of the game. Our scenario was 3 rounds, or turns, however you, interchangeable. They chose to trigger theirs at the end of round 2. They could have chosen to do it at the end of round 3, but only certain operations can be run, only early, some late, some interchangeably, and they can do multiple operations, but they're setting that up. We are trying to give notice to the Allied bases, hey, 2 hours out, we just saw some Japanese fighters fly by, or we saw a convoy of ships heading your way, you got about a 2-hour notice. And that's really what happened. So that's how that works. But it's all done by this chit pool system. And I asked Volko, so while each side is taking their turn, and I'll get to the story in a minute, I'm going to tell it from the standpoint of the allies, since that's what I played. Japanese do some stuff. When they say they're ready, literally, you got to look down, maybe step away from the table, whatever it might be. Just, it's truly, you don't want to ruin the game experience. So you hide, you avert your eyes, and they're going to be changing out chits, because that's their hidden information. Okay. And they're going to be hunting our coast watchers. On our turn, we get 5 actions. The actions are broken up into a group of A, a group of B, and then there's 1 action in C, 1 action in D. But you can do mix and match as many times as you want, as many as you can, but you get 5 total between the 4 groups. But once you've moved on to the next group, you can't circle back to the earlier group. So for instance, Group A is all about flooding their chip pool, their draw pool, full of misses for them, or empties. So we want to do that. So there are certain, but we can only do it a limited number of times. Plus there are other things for rescues, but we're trying to do a bunch of things to flood their draw pool. But to do that, we have our own draw pool that they can play cards that influence the composition of our draw pool permanently. So maybe there's 2 bad chits and 9 good chits for us. They can play a card that now maybe it's -1 or -2 good chits, so you change the composition of the draw pools. And so, okay, and it's success or not, and if it's successful, it can be way successful, totally, they didn't see anything. It could be successful, but we got to reveal a block. Revealed blocks are obviously more vulnerable. Or it failed, and we have to reveal a block, which is terrible. So there's that. So we do that. Then in B, we can trade out blocks. So again, hey, or we can go hunting in that area. The coast, we can activate coast watchers. Again, it's on a chit pool. Is it successful? If it is, we get the peek of their chit. And then there's a reporting area, and that's going to be how we score victory points. So it's back and forth alternating. And it came down to the threshold for the Japanese. They score positive. The Allies score, take away those points. The threshold was 7 points, I think, in their scenario. And they scored, I think, 5.5. So technically the Allies won by 1.5 points. But it was touch and go. And it was, thematically, it was great. We were able to tell the story of a couple of our coast watchers got found out, but we were able to rescue them, or they slipped into the woods. We dropped off supplies to make it easier. They escaped capture, and they successfully gave enough warning to limit the damage of the Tokyo Express. Stuff like that. So that was awesome. So that's the game. Then, during one of the Japanese turns, me being the world's biggest 5-year-old and always wanting to know the why and the how, and that's why I like interviewing designers, I'm talking to Volko, and I said, hey, Volko, I said, where did the idea of this system, because again, it's 3 games, this just in, if Volko designs a system, he's going to make a lot of games about that system, i.e. the coin system. Weird. I don't blame him at all. So again, Draken, you have Hunt for Blackbeard, and you have Coast Watchers. So all of this is built off of that system. And I said, where'd this come from? I was like, was it a challenge for yourself? Was it something else? And then he goes into this very long and wonderfully long, like this is a positive thing, talking about back when I was, let's just say in his former life, he, 2 of the key things was deception, and it was like disinformation and I'm forgetting the words. But he was talking about how that works and how instead of dice, why he chose the chip pool system. And he gave a lot of credit to Amabel Holland about how she was able to subtly impact the odds in games like Supply Lines of the American Revolution, as well as Agricola, how he was inspired by that and gave her credit that how the card play and you could just ever so slightly tweak the chip pool and the odds as opposed to having a DRM chart that is a mile long or having a million custom dice. And I'm over here just like wide-eyed listening to this like, this is awesome, hearing about this. And how he's tying in his former life, working at the agency. He didn't call it that, I am. Doing his stuff. And it's just, I'm wrapped. And I was like, hey, Volko, I have the gathering of friends for a couple weeks after this. I said, but when I get back, will you sit down for an interview? Because I really want to talk about these things. And I think people would be really interested. He's like, absolutely. And then we got to talking about, okay, Jason, if you hear this, turn this off. Or just stop listening for a minute. Where you're talking about the fact that Coast Watchers, again, I just described this game to y'all, doesn't have a solo. No shit. Think of the game. Obviously, it doesn't have a solo. I would not presume for this game to be soloable. We just played Vimar. Vimar plays 4 players specifically. There is a space in this industry for games that play a certain player count, and that's okay. Not every game has to accommodate every game or every player count. I will die on this hill. However, let's just say Volko's designing a solo mode, apparently, for Coast Watchers. I'm curious why, but I'm also curious how. How do you even do that? So anyway, Volko's like, look, what you do, he was talking media in general, but he said me, but it's media in general. How we're able to help bring more people into these games. And I think that's awesome. That's exactly what we're trying to do. I'm not trying to sell you games. I'm trying to show you games, broaden horizons, or show you a game maybe that you missed. And maybe this piques your interest and you step into a realm that you wouldn't have thought of that you really enjoy. And I think that's awesome. And yeah, so there's this symbiotic relationship, obviously. And you ought to hear the way, and you're going to. And Volko's done a million interviews, so it's not like I'm doing something that no one else has done. I mean, Liz over at Beyond Solitaire does an amazing job doing interviews. A number of folks do. But I specifically wanted to dig into this system and everything, and he's so eager and like excitable and passionate. That's the word. Passionate about what he does, that I think that's going to come through and it's going to get folks excited about the game. So yeah. So anyway, that was Coast Watchers. That was a highlight for sure. And I'm glad I got into it. So thanks, Volko. Really looking forward to that one. And yeah. All right, there you go. Oh, good. Jason says also Volko showed me, again, Jason's the head of development at GMT. A work in progress solitaire for Coast Watchers. More info soon. So, yay. All right. All right. Anyway, so that's Coast Watchers. Leaving that, at that point, James went off and at a war game convention played the obvious tournament of baseball highlights 2045, I think it's called, or baseball highlights. Y'all know the game. I'm joking about the obvious. They had a tournament. It looked like a lot of fun. They were having a good time. They did a round robin thing. Kevin was in it. James was excited that he made the finals. So that was awesome. So he was doing that. While he's doing that, I went over and I was like, hey, Jason, talking about Carr. We had already talked about, hey, I want to get into some of these games. I was like, hey, can I, you know, do you have, are you free? Can I check out Twilight Struggle? the South Asian monsoon. And he's like, yeah, give me 10, 15 minutes. I was like, whatever, just come grab me. I'm in. Yes, I'm there. So, yeah. So he does come over. And so Jason Carr, developer, head of development of GMT, is there. Jason Matthews is sitting there. Now, Jason and I have interacted, like, we sort of have met, but like surface level. And we've interacted a bunch online, but still Jason Matthews, like, dude. And he's sitting there. And then my opponent is a Carr, and I don't know his last name, doesn't matter. So scary knowledgeable. And I was like, hold on one second. I said, Akar, how many games, Twilight Struggle, have you played? And he's like, not that many, like 30 or 40. And I'm like, I played 4. And I have both Jasons here. And I'm like, can y'all just show us the game and then like go? Like, I don't want to, I'm going to embarrass myself. I don't have, And both the Jasons, they're like, actually, it's going to work to your benefit because you're going to have to unlearn a lot of the Twilight Struggle, so you're going to have an advantage. And I'm like, I'm thinking to myself, I appreciate what y'all are saying. You're lying. They're not. But I'm thinking, okay, you're being kind. I appreciate it. But I'm going to get all right, fine. So then, Jason, thank you, Ken. So Ken, if you're watching, thank you. If we had not just recently streamed Twilight Struggle, I would have been so because I haven't played it in years up until our recent couple plays. And I was so intimidated by it, but I wanted to try it. And it looks small. So I asked, oh, so this is like Twilight Struggle Light. Jason Carr was like, no, it is not. He didn't make the face. I'm dramatic license here. And a Carr claimed, after we played, summed it up perfectly. It's smaller, or it's simpler, but not less than Twilight Struggle. And that, I told him, I said, look, I'm totally stealing that because that is perfectly summed up. So, Twilight Struggle, I'm struggling with the after part. There you go. South Asian Monsoon. It takes place in, I want to say 1940 to late 70s, I think. I don't have the years. And again, my knowledge of this history, as well as this area being Southeast and Southwest Asia. So the Indian subcontinent, Malaysia, Thailand, Nepal, all that area. So Jason Carr, again, Jason Carr is designer and developer on this. He's like, okay, I'm going to teach this, but I'm going to teach it from a standpoint that you have a knowledge of Twilight Struggle. And I was like, I'm like, oh, thank you, Ken, for having streamed this recently. Hey, Bernardo. And so I was really grateful for that because it was relatively fresh in my head. So I'm like, okay, cool. So a lot of it is going to be reminiscent of it. Like, you're going to get a hand of cards, you're going to play it for ops, you're going to play it for the event, or if it's your opponent's event, you have to trigger it, you trigger it before or after. That's all similar. And that's pretty much where it ends. You have a victory point track, it's a tug of war. The goal, at least right now, this is a prototype that I'm talking. They were handwriting on cards as we were playing, changing things. It was a prototype, so all caveats that come with it. But right now it's a race to 10 points as opposed to 20. And, hey, it was, I think, 5 rounds total, I believe is what it was going to be. Didn't make it 5 rounds. And obviously the cards are appropriate for the location, the time period, the events, the whole 9 yards. So, but there's also these non-aligned countries, and the non-alignment changes the game fundamentally. China is a place where you can play influence, but is almost like a third player in a sort of way that China places in influence, and they're working out how that's exactly happening. But when China has influence, neither the Soviets or the US can place influence until you remove China's influence. Even if they have influence or you have influence there, you can't play until you remove it. So that was cool. Certain countries are completely out of play until cards come into play. Again, there's a early, mid, late deck of cards. There's scoring cards. Again, there's presence, domination, control, and all that. So that's going to be somewhat similar or mostly similar. There is a global influence track, not a space race. The way it was in our game, it's space race with a different name. But, and this was one of the highlights of the entire convention for me, I gotta be honest, is Jason Matthews hated that we kept like, oh, this card sucks, I'm gonna space it. Both Jasons, to be honest, hated that it's not a space race. And it became a joke between me and Akar and I, so they're changing that, but I'll talk about how that's going to maybe change. Not really the discussion, just how that evolved afterwards. But there's that, but that's going to change. I have no doubt that that's going to change. But there are enough things here that are going to be familiar for a Twilight Struggle player, but that are completely different. So again, it is smaller and it is simpler than Twilight Struggle, but it is not less than, and I think that summed it up well. So how did the game go? Me nervous as hell, trying not to make an ass of myself in front of the Jasons. And then as the game goes on, now, a car is clearly from this region of the world. And as they're playing events, they're laughing, the three of them, because they have intimate knowledge of because this is what they all do. And I'm over here and I'm like, why is that funny? Right? And trying and asking and trying not to look like a total idiot. And and I was like, oh, why is that controversial? Right? And all three of them, to their credit, were really, really welcoming and really kind, because it was clear I was not at their level of knowledge about all of these world events that happened there. And come to find out that Akar works as a professional wargaming company, like for the DoD. And so, like, this is what he does for a living. So they're talking super intricate discussion, and I'll be honest, I'm pretty fascinated listening to this while we're playing the game. And the three of them are having like little jokes about some of the air quoted cards, and it's fascinating. So that's a little intimidating, to be clear, but I'm like, okay, I'm not embarrassing myself. I know how to play the game. Okay. And there's a tug of war. And it just so happened that I got a series of these three cards that all play off of one another. And I was able to figure out the path. I was like, oh, this card feeds to this one, and I was like, and so Akar played his and then I play mine. And they're like, oh yeah. And the Jasons are like, oh, that's cool, right? And then on my next turn they're like, oh, you got him back to, oh, that's so good. It's awesome to see that worked. And then I got the third one. They're like, it is insane that you were able to get all three in the same hand and played them in the right way. And it was like, they were both really excited to see it play out that way. Like, oh, hey, because they're play testing and they're watching what we're doing, and also coming from how Akar being a more experienced Twilight Struggle player and me being pretty new to it and not really having that knowledge base and seeing how we're going about, and are we ignoring certain cards? Are we not seeing the way things are supposed to? So it was cool to watch all of that. Okay. And so I was +5. The goal of the game, or, you win at 10. And then this happened. There was a scoring card. I forget which one it was, that basically swung it like 6 points for a car. So it went +5 me to +1 him. And then he had another scoring card, the non-alignment scoring card, that like got him like 8 points. Bop, 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 bop. So in the span of like 3 cards, it was a 15-point swing. And I was like, whoa. But it was awesome. And it was awesome. Even though I was on the wrong end of it, it was awesome to watch it work. And watching both the Jasons, like, oh my God, I've never seen that. That is amazing. And like seeing that. And then watching how they were like, oh no, that's really cool. And talking about, do they need to adjust the points or any of that, and how that went. And those discussions that were going on. At this point, James had come around. He was done with his tournament, and he was watching all this. And at one point, I just looked over at James, and I was like, this is so cool, isn't it? Like, listening to this. And thank you, Jason. The Straits of Malacca scoring is 7 points. Thank you. And then after that, it was the non-alignment scoring. And it was awesome to watch this, but it was awesome to watch and listen, to be privy to the discussion on how this went. And then the highlight for me happened. So while that's going on and afterwards, like, I'm sort of, and then, then Jason's like, so what'd you think? And by Jason, I mean Jason Carr. Now, Jason Matthews he's kind of the quiet observer on these things. And Jason Carr, as the developer, they're getting together because Jason Carr lives out west. Matthews lives in DC, so they don't, I'm sure they get together online and all this, but like they're getting together in person probably for the first time. And so Jason's like, hey, I changed this card. Oh, what do you think of this? Oh, I added this or adjusted this. What do you think? While we're playing, I'm trying to focus on the game, but I can't help but listening to, because they're sitting right next to us, listening to this discussion, because this is how the sausage is made, and that's far more interesting to me than me getting my ass kicked at Twilight Struggle, but also making sure that I don't want to embarrass myself getting my ass kicked on the way to getting my ass kicked at Twilight Struggle. So, okay. So that's going on. So Jason Matthews is kind of just listening to us, and Jason Carr, being the developer, he wants our direct feedback. And I'm like, look, I thought this was cool. I like this. I didn't think this was very impactful. It could have been the way we played it, but like it was just like we ignored it. It wasn't really meaningful, whatever. And then a Carr, being the more experienced Twilight Struggle player, thought about some things and the space race that isn't the space race. It was clear that the Jasons weren't super happy. And in fact, Jason Matthews was like, we got to change something because it's going to kill me hearing people say, oh, I'm just going to space that card. And I want it different in it. And hearing a Carr and the Jasons talk about different ways that they could intermingle certain aspects of the game and completely change the way the non-space race, space race track works. And I don't want to overshare here. But some of those ideas that they had, I'm like, oh, dude, that sounds really cool. I want to experience that. Like, I'm listening to the brainstorming of ideas between them. And I'm sitting here listening and trying to envision. I'm like, oh, yeah. And I'm watching while a car is explaining just some of his off-the-cuff ideas, he's a professional board game designer, but again, they're different kinds of board games. They don't need to be balanced. They're not focused solely on fun because this is real world stuff, etc. But watching Jason's face, Jason Carr was standing over here, and Jason Matthews sitting down so they're on either side of a car. And I'm watching that and watching his reaction to what he's almost like pantomiming, like you could do this and maybe that, or maybe the high or the low or whatever. And I'm watching this and I'm like, this is probably the single coolest aspect of heavy cardboard, of the privilege that I get as heavy cardboard. Now, I'm sure, excuse me, trying not to get sick. I love playing board games. I love this aspect better. The how and the why and that's why Wednesday at Essen is always my favorite day. It's setup day. And you get to see the behind the scenes stuff. And watching this interaction and how, and the respect that I have for both of them, and now a car listening to his clear knowledge of both the history, the politics, the like all of this, as well as the knowledge of the game and how he's able to, and I didn't know this at the time that what he did for a living, but looking on it now, his knowledge and his legitimate input on this and how this could work. That was just one of those, I'm going to really remember this. It was awesome. And this goes back to the only other time that I really have been wowed in these kind of situations was the very first time I got to go to the Gathering of Friends. Tom Lehman was his trick-taking like fantasy card game. I always struggle remembering the name of it. It was ahead of when that got released. And Jess and I were playing it with him, with Jeroen Douwman of Splatter, and the designer of Kalis. And I'm probably getting the name wrong. Anyway, so I'm like, I don't fit in here, but whatever. And Res Arcana. Thank you, Shrey. And then the designer of Kalis broke the game. Now, this is a prototype again, right? And Tom Lehman's like, okay, you broke that. I'm going to take your toy away. You don't get to break that anymore. Okay, cool. Then we finish the game. And then listening to Tom Lehman, Jeroen Douwman, and again, Kalis designer, can't think of his name. The three of them talking shop in how to fix that and how to make the game better. I'm like a kid in a candy store listening to this. So that's the only other time where it's really been, oh my God, this is amazing being able to listen to this because of who they are and what their track record is. That was just cool to be me and to listen to that. So y'all weren't there. I get it. And I'm not saying this to try and make y'all jealous. I'm saying this to try and share with you this experience because you weren't there, and I want you to be able to kind of live vicariously through that. Because I don't know, maybe you don't care. Maybe you couldn't, like, whatever. Just give me the finished game. I just want to play the damn game. That's fine. That's okay. But I imagine some of y'all out there are like me, and I was just like, this is amazing. And it was just so... It's one of those things to where I'm like, after this, like, this is what I want to do. Like, I want to go to have these experiences. And it was just, yeah, it was awesome. Yeah. William Attia. Thank you, Shrey. That's it. But yeah, listening to this was just, that was, honest to God, the highlight of the entire trip for me. I love baseball. The baseball game was amazing. The dinner that we had after this experience was like, I will forever remember the dinner. This was the highlight for me. And it wasn't even me playing the game. It was the just listening to how that works. And that was just cool. That was really, really cool. Yeah. Bert says, Ed, it's Edward, but I get it. Ed's enthusiasm is as infectious as hay fever. But yeah, so that fly on the wall position is the best, watching the game come together. Exactly. And it was just, and I mean, don't get me wrong. It's cool. Like, I had this experience with but it's Jason Matthews. And it's Jason Carr. Now, I didn't know Jason Carr before the convention. But his position, he's the head of development at GMT. Let that sink in. Not for a game. The developers work for him. Like, and he's also like the lead developer on games. Like, that's clout, right? Like and the experience there. And it's, again, it's Jason Matthews. And it was just really cool. And I feel like I can consider both of them friends now. And it was just, yeah, it was just a surreal experience. It was really, really cool. Yeah, that was a lot of fun. All right. So that was the end of Saturday. And then, then after that, I told you, Kevin sent out this email. Hey, these are good restaurants. Ben's Chili was on there. We tried that on Friday. And then I got invited to a dinner to a restaurant I would not normally go to. And it was like a 4-course meal, wine taste. I didn't do that, but it was an unbelievable experience. Unbelievable. It was, yeah, I am grateful. I got taken there. I would not go to this restaurant normally. It was very highbrow. Thankfully, we didn't feel embarrassingly underdressed. So that was good, but it was so good, we felt the need to come back and give Kevin a hug for the recommendation on Sunday. It was memorable. So that was awesome. Yeah. Yeah, see, Simeon, I learned more about history and world issues from GMT games than I ever did from high school. Thank you. Vimar is I've talked about this ad nauseum to some degree that, look, I know what happened in Germany, and I understand, roughly, the politics from 33 to 45 in Germany. 18 to 33, blank spot. Had no clue until I played Vimar. Then I went and did some reading, watched some videos. Like, now, I have a new wrinkle in my brain. I knew nothing about the Coast Watchers. Now I want to go learn about that. I had no clue about how Southwest and Southeast Asia and how that played a part in the Cold War. No clue. Curious about it now. And that's amazing. That's what I love about this hobby, is you can be interested in a certain time period. I love ancients. I love ancient Greek, ancient Roman, ancient Carthaginian, Macedonian. I love that history. So I naturally drawn to those games. I really have, like, musket and pike, Napoleonics, never was interested in that stuff. English Civil War, World War II, World War I. World War I was not at all interested in. Then there's a couple ways to go about it. You either learn about it from something like Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. His series on World War I is seminal, as far as I'm concerned, for podcasts. And the History of Rome podcast was, without the History of Rome podcast, Heavy Cardboard doesn't exist. So you can go about learning, getting interested in history that way, or playing a game, which in my case, War of the Roses. I think it was no, it wasn't War. English Civil War. Unhappy King Charles had no knowledge of the English Civil War and how all that, but it made me interested. So now I went and read and watched videos and learned about that from the game, because of the game. And how amazing. What other hobbies make you want to do that? That's so cool, isn't it? It's just so cool. It really is. All right. Hey, Skippin'. There you go. Had no interest in World War I until I played Paths of Glory. Exactly. Exactly. There you go. We're on to drink number 2. Don't judge my pink drink. It's delicious. And I've been working. We didn't get home till after 3 a.m. Yes, I'm justifying my purchase. It's a treat. I don't normally do this. Marcus, what Rome podcast? Mike Duncan's The History of Rome. The single greatest podcast series in the history of podcasts, in my opinion. To be clear, it was my very first podcast I listened to. I want to say it's like 176 episodes. You're welcome. If you haven't listened, finish this. But go. It's worth it. Mike Duncan has a certain dry humor that's amazing. He somehow fits the Battle of Hoth in Star Wars into History of Rome. His podcast or his episode in the History of Rome about Saturnalia is just wonderful. It is fantastic. Cannot recommend it enough. Anyway. All right. So let's see. There you go. And Joe says, being from the UK, had no real interest in the American Civil War, but there are plenty of games to bump into that now it piques my interest. That's awesome. That's so good. Yeah, it really is, Marcus. It really is amazing. All right, so that was Twilight Struggle. So, okay, we had the dinner. Cool. We have to get up early the next day because at 10 a.m. sharp, we have Cross Bronx Expressway. I've had an amazing convention leading up to this point, but I'll be honest, probably the game that I was most interested in trying, and that is because of y'all, like, if you get a chance to play Cross Bronx Expressway, you need to do it. I want to hear about it. Please, please, please. So, signed up for it and got into a playtest of it. Now, I knew nothing about the designer, nothing about developer, nothing until I came to Circle DC. And I ran into the developer. I met the developer, Joe D. And he was like, hey, for tomorrow's playtest, for the first hour, I'm going to have you guys go through the how to play booklet and then basically give me feedback and learn it from that. Is that cool? I was like, yeah, it's totally fine, right? Yeah, okay. All right. It's a 3-player only game. Let me rephrase that. It is 1 to 3 players. We played it 4 players. Now, the reason for that, when I signed up for it, I tried to get James in there, couldn't. So I was like, hey, James, let's be like a 2-headed monster, aka Mr. President, that. So he and I teamed up. Plus, I'll be honest, again, I struggle learning new games for the first bit. Like, they don't click. James does. It clicks way quicker. And so having that kind of helps me, but also saves me some embarrassment of having to be like, I'm not following. Just being honest. So it was me, James, as the public. It was Brooks as community. And, oh God. Help. Who was the third player? I can't remember. Like total. I can see him. Yeah. Anyway. He was playing at... Oh, no, it was Michael. God, there you go. All right. He was playing as, like, private. So it's private, public, and community, I think. I'll be, again, full disclosure, didn't know really a whole lot about the game. Just your enthusiasm. A lot of y'all were like, ooh, I want to hear about it. Okay. Coin-esque, built on the coin system. Now it's part of the Irregular Conflict series. Cross Bronx Expressway is from the, I want to say, to the 40s through the 90s. So like 1940 to 2000. The socioeconomic development of the borough of the Bronx in New York City. Let's just pause for a moment. These are board games. How awesome is that? That excites me. Not a lot of games about that, I reckon. A lot of trading in the Mediterranean. On a serious note, these unique settings and themes excite the ever-living crap out of me. I am so stoked to have this stuff. And you get designers who, these are passion projects. Like, they clearly are familiar with the history of these things. And that's awesome. And it brings these things to light that you wouldn't normally. Okay, all right. So, all right. Coming in, oh boy. My biggest, bummer of the convention is we didn't get to play enough Cross Bronx Expressway. Let's be clear on that. Because we basically made it through the Learn to Play or How to Play booklet, and that was it. We played 2 turns and a census. A normal game is going to be 16 turns and 2 census. Yeah. So we scratched just the bare surface, and I just want to play it more. That's my biggest regret from, that's the thing. I'm like, come on, I need more. Okay. So we sat down, and Joe, the developer, and let me back up to, oh God, I keep starting and stopping the story. I apologize, or the description of the actual game. Back up to Friday. Yeah, Saturday, sorry. James and I are walking to the convention after we stayed in an Airbnb in Brookland because who the hell can afford hotels in central DC? Good Lord. Anyway, we were out in the suburbs, but on the metro line, so that was cool. So we took the metro in every morning and then walked the last 15 minutes. It was great. So we're walking in, and I did not realize this at the time, but the designer of Cross Bronx Expressway met up with us. We walked past this green area in near where the convention was held, and this guy's like, hey, I've been waiting all day to ambush you. He was kidding. And it was NB. NB stands for non-breaking space. That is his name. And I asked NB after the fact. I was like, okay, you gotta, if I'm asking something I shouldn't, tell me to shut the hell up. I'm okay with that. That's fine. But you know what I do for a living. So you watch this, you watch the show. What's up with the name? And he's like, oh, do you know non-breaking space? I'm looking at him. I'm like, do you see the question mark above my head? Nope, no clue. But since 99% of y'all out there that are in computer programming or computer science in some degree, y'all know what that is. I did not. And he explained it. That it's basically, he wants to be anonymous and he wants the games to speak. He doesn't need any of the spotlight. And I was like, all right, I can appreciate that. I can respect that. I said, but what's your real name? He said, NB. Noted. Understood. NB it is. All right, cool. So there you go. So I didn't know NB, right? When he came up, I had seen him at the convention the day before. Just a dude. Again, right? Oh, hey, Mark. Says it was good seeing you. Regret we didn't play a game. Me too. But you know what, Mark? When you come up to the Cape this summer, I would love to have you at the studio. Play a game here. We can hang out. We can chew the fat. Mark Herman. He's designed a couple of games here or there, whatever. The only game we cannot play, Mark, is Churchill. Told you, I'm retired from Churchill. Nope. Can't do that one. Sorry. So I didn't know NB, but I'd seen him, and it should have been a clue. On Friday, there's this dude with a shirt that said Cross Bronx Expressway on it. Should have been a clue. Nope. Anyway, so he's walking with us. He's like, hey, yeah, I'll walk with you, right? And we're like, all these places are closed, like to grab a coffee on the way to the convention. He's like, oh yeah, it's DC on the weekend, da-da-da-da. He's like, oh, there's this place over here, there's this place over here. And we're like, oh, awesome. I said, so you're local? And he's like, no. I'm like, how do you know all this then? He's like, I just scope it all out, like where I'm going to be. And I'm like, God bless you. All right. So went, got a coffee, hung out. All right, cool. We walked back in, and and then I'm like, so what's your name? He's like, NB. And I heard it, but it still didn't trigger. Anyway. So we're sitting down at Cross Bronx Expressway. The game is not set up. There are 3 positions, like your seating area. You have your components in front of you. Joe handed us our books, said have at it. And he has his notebook, and he's sitting at the end of the table. All right, cool, let's go. Okay, cool. So we start reading. It's word dense. Let's start there. So before I go any further, caveat. It's a prototype. It is very far along. What they're working on now is working this how to play, learn to play booklet specifically. Joe, the developer, was amazing at taking our feedback. After the fact, Joe fed me to the wolves, and Brooks also, thank you, Brooks, for being a part of that, fed me and Brooks to the wolves, i.e., he was like, hey, Edward, come here. I want you to talk to NB about the ideas you guys had. And I was like, oh God, now he's going to think I'm calling his baby ugly. Great. What I mean by that is NB's the designer. I'm about to critique the design. So I prefaced, I was like, look, NB, we're not calling your baby ugly. We think your baby is great. We just want to give it the best clothes possible. So here. So that said, how this went. We sat down. So my critiques understand are, and by I mean me, James, Brooks, and Michael all collaboratively did this. We sat down and we're reading through this, and every player has their own learn to play that is tailored towards their faction. So we sit down and we're reading through, and we're the blue player, I think is doesn't matter the color. We were public. So we're reading it. Okay, cool. James reads quick. He reads faster than I do and reads faster than Brooks does. Here's why I bring this up. We're setting up, and part of the learn to play is you're setting up a portion of the game board. And then it tells you what the other players are going to be doing as far as setup. And so we start setting up Brooks's stuff. And that was good. I hope so, Mark. That'd be awesome. Thank you. And he's like, oh, what are y'all doing? And we're like, oh, we're just setting up your stuff. And he's like, I haven't gotten there yet. So, okay, we work through the setup. But then we're all like doing things simultaneously. We don't have context yet, but we're also setting up things like and moving pieces around the board that as turns but we haven't been given the turn structure. So the feedback, so what we're doing, so long story long is eventually you get through the how to play. It's one event card. If you were, I'm going to assume that a lot of y'all have familiarity with some coin game. Doesn't matter which one, a coin game. How this works, and again, I'm going to talk about it from where it is right now. And I'll also give some of the things that we suggested in all this. The game, I believe, is supposed to play over 2 decades. A decade is 8 event cards and a census card. The how to play, as it's written currently, is 1 event card, then you play an event card, and then the census happens, and then you're off and running. The event card is just like a coin game. One player can act to take like their main action, a full ops, if you will. One player, 3 players, 4 options. The full ops you can do, which is act. The event is do the thing on the card, and then if so, then you're choosing how things move and such. Then there is, and I forget the terminology, there's a limited op, like a react, that's what it's called. And the 4th option is basically a pass, but you're going to get first option next turn. So that is very coin-y. So that's one of the main similarities to the coin, or one of the things that it takes from the coin system. So in the how to play, it has us making a decision early on that we have no context for. And Brooks, his book says you should try and negotiate and try and convince the public player to form a coalition with you. And we're like, sure, okay, we'll do it. Sounds good. And then we carry out kind of that first hand-holding turn. Okay, and we're all discussing all of this, but we're all kind of doing it at the same time. Like there's no sense of turn order yet. And then the game basically says, here, go do this. But it also then talks about how the difference between population and vulnerable population and all of these things. A little context here for you. Cross Bronx Expressway, it's a coin game, kind of, set in Bronx, and again, that socioeconomic stuff. So what you're going to be doing is each faction has its own set of resources, and you're trying to build the infrastructure to basically have the Bronx prosper, but in a way so that benefits you the best, obviously. Within that, there's commentary, but also, I guess morality might not be the right word, but social impact. What you're doing, you see it. The vulnerable cubes, which we highly suggested change from cubes to something else, they are representative of the population, but not a part of the population. Vulnerable cubes can be unhoused, aka homeless, and those are more likely to end up on Rikers Island incarcerated. And then there are ways to then bring them back into society and lower the vulnerable population in the different parts of the borough. It is an incredibly thematic and rich experience. We just didn't get too terribly far into it, which is, again, my biggest regret on this. Yeah, kinda. Yeah, Simeon says, it sounds like assembling IKEA furniture without ever seeing a picture of what you set out to build. That's actually pretty fair. Now, that was intentional from NB's standpoint, and I'll talk about all this. So then it starts talking about why the vulnerable population and the impact of that on the game, right? And why this matters. So now we're like, oh, we're starting to see, okay, obviously you need to have housing built for when, and if you develop the infrastructure in a neighborhood, it's going to bring people to the neighborhood. Population's going to grow. That's great, provided that there's infrastructure. If there's not, if it closes, or if there aren't enough things for them, they're going to leave. You lose population, that's not necessarily good. And again, I'm telling it from the standpoint of the faction that we played. I don't have a real good feeling on the other factions. There are coalitions that can get made. There are 3 different coalitions that can get made, obviously, between the 3 players. And that will impact resources, impact expenses, and income for your faction. Again, very coin-esque in that regard, in the way there are cylinders out there, there are markers on the resource track, and they represent different things. Again, very coin-esque. But the vulnerable population, collectively, if it hits a certain threshold, we all lose. So it's not semi-co-op, but it has aspects of it. So then, in that second event card, we were talking about, okay, this is going to benefit all of us if we make this work in a certain order. So you're supposed to go first, you're supposed to go second, whatever. And so we're like, okay, so there is that negotiation aspect of, okay, you really should take the full ops, and then it doesn't matter whether we react or you take the event. We didn't think. Okay, so yeah, and then you do this, and cool. So we all kind of agreed on the actions that we were going to take. Or actually, none of us did the event. The event was still trigger. And then Brooks, his was community. His faction, really, it didn't really matter what he did that turn, so he passed. And even though he was going to go into a census, which is kind of the scoring reset phase, he could just take a full ops the next turn, right? So he's like, yeah, it's fine. So we did our things, and then we realized, oh no, we do need to be the one to take the limited op or the full op or whatever because of this. So we're kind of all talking about all of this. And when we talked to NB afterwards, he's like, yes, that's exactly what I'm going for. And we agreed with him. Said, but it was way too hard to get there. So he's like, okay, that's valid. That's sure. So we all did that. Okay. So we played out that event. We saw what happened. And then we did the census. And then we did the scoring. And then get ready for the next decade. And that's where we ended the game. So as you can see, we really didn't get the full experience of it. But with that said, we got enough to know that, oh my God, we want more of this. Yes, I want to get into this. So there's that. But what I think we did have a meaningful impact on was, okay, look, and all 4 of us are 5 of us, really. It's the 4 of us players. Again, me and James is a 2-headed player. Joe was there, and he's just right, like his pen probably ran out of ink. And it's not that things were bad or wrong. Just we thought we could improve it collectively because, look, here we are sitting down trying to use this learn to play, and it's not really teaching us. So some of the suggestions that we had boiled down to a couple of things. A moment, Jess texted. All right, making sure we're still on schedule for the kids. What it boiled down to was we think that the learn to play should be longer. and it should be truly hand-holding, number one. It should be 2 events, the 2 events that we played, and the census. So that was our suggestion number 1. Probably the biggest suggestion, I think, collectively and I don't remember who said it. Doesn't matter. Could have been Brooks, could have been Michael, could have been James. Doesn't matter. Was don't give everybody their own Learn to Play booklet. Have one. And then the active player physically has the book in their hand and is reading it out to the table. And the reason for that is everybody was doing their own thing and paying attention to what they were doing. They weren't paying attention to what the other factions were, and you're not learning anything from that. And you're supposed to be. So that was the biggest takeaway I think we had from that, was one book and literally spell it out. Pick up this piece. You pick a purple coalition, whatever, a coalition, and set it on this. And why you're doing that is because of this. And then if you want to have, okay, hey, here's the option. When I said we had that choice for things, we could do one of 3 things. We have no context. So instead, tell us, at this point, we have this choice. We choose this. And you say that in there and then explain why we're choosing that. Okay. So there was that. And we thought 2 events and a census. Now, the other thing was, Joe was like, it's weird. Decade's 10 years. It's 8 cards. And we were like, hey, maybe you could put in like just a flavor card. So now it's 10 cards. It's 8 and this flavor card for that decade. And then the census card be the 10th card. Now it's 10 cards in the deck. Hey, how about that, right? Have a good one, Bart. I don't blame you. It's gorgeous out. It's like 65 degrees outside. It's amazing. All right. So there was that. Also, we were talking about maybe changing some of the terminology to make it lower that barrier to entry, because hardcore gamers, they're going to be drawn to this game. But if you want people that aren't coin regulars to play this, maybe lowering that burden would be good. Another thing that we talked about was, and again, there comes a point of just component limitations and they can't. So we understand that. But the Learn to Play stuff, could they make it their own thing? So the game takes place in the 40s through the 90s. Could you do this Learn to Play as a 3-card 30s deck? So a 1 card hand holding in the 30s, 1 hand holding in the 30s, and then the 40 census card, and then you start playing the 1940s. That's an option, maybe. Okay. No, I'm not sniffling, actually. Oh yeah, maybe, whatever. So that was one option. Another option was, if this is supposed to be a Learn to Play, and then you play the full 2 decades. Another option is the Learn to Play actually takes place as the 7th card of the 40s decade. Then the 8th card, which is the last card of the 40s decade. Then you have the 1950 census. And then the hand holding's done and you're off to the races and you play 1 full decade. And that's the learning game. And the full decade is no hand holding. Okay, you're off and running after doing that. So that was a suggestion we had as well. Changing the vulnerable population, because like one of the things is count the population. The population cubes are just regular like wood color cubes. The vulnerable population are pink cubes. But they're called population cubes and vulnerable. I think it's vulnerable, but they're not part of the population. So when it says count the population, I was counting all the cubes that were out there. No. You only count the wood color ones. And I was like, oh. So again, clearing up that confusion, stuff like that. So unfortunately, that's the best I can explain to y'all for Cross Bronx Expressway. it was a lot of the play testing of the how to play. What I will say is the aspects and the symbiotic, the parasitic symbiotic relationship, as well as the temporary alliances in the coalitions that will form, just got all four of us were like, yeah, this is probably the thing that we got such a small taste, but it was enough to whet the appetite. But now we're like, oh, come on, I need to play this more. So there. So that was our experience of Cross Bronx Expressway. Now, to NB's credit, Joe wanted us to talk to him to like float these ideas and try and understand and explain to him from our point of view why we think XYZ, why these changes would improve things. And he was like, oh, that conversation that was happening at the table, that's what I'm going for. I totally get that. I understand that. But it took us a long time to understand what it was that we were supposed to be discussing. And the hand-holding should be longer. And then we get to that. And he's like, okay, that's fair. So that was awesome. That was a wonderful experience. And all we want is to play it more. So Joe and Jason, hurry, please. I would like to play that, and a lot of y'all out there would like to play that. All right? So hopefully that's interesting. Was that way too rambly? I apologize. That was, but again, that was one of those really cool experiences to be able to really have meaningful feedback that hopefully will help. So there's that. Hopefully you found that interesting and didn't run away and like, oh, I'm tired of hearing this guy ramble. All right. So then after that, so Sebastian Bay, as I mentioned, is a teacher, professor, fill in the right word here, Marine also, that works as a professional wargaming designer for the Department of the Navy. So Marine Corps, Navy. He teaches game design course at Georgetown University. And so he had a couple of students with him, and I want to make sure that I get the name right on this. One of the students there was by the name of Robert Shala. And the night before, so this is Sunday, Saturday night, he and Sebastian apparently are just like chilling. I don't know if it's a hotel room, at a bar, whatever. And part of this class is designing real world board games, but not for hobbyists, for real world, like again, for DoD type stuff. And so they're designing these games, but he was inspired for whatever reason to design this game. And he called it Open Windows. So again, isn't it Robert, right? Is that what I just said? Sorry. Move that there. Yeah. So Robert had this game. It's literally on a notebook, and it's 2 sheets of paper that he had just drawn stuff on. It had some blocks. It had some X's drawn on some of the blocks and some dice, and that was it. And importantly, a copy of Gorky Park, the book, because the game called Open Windows is about one player plays as Putin, one player plays as the West. Now, the West is definitely the most interesting of the two sides, but I would argue both sides are kind of fun to play. I only played the West side, but I saw both. It's a very simple micro game, but it was really, really fascinating. The goal of the game for the West is it's a hidden block thing. There are 7, like Ministry of Defense, the oil, gas, and whatever the third natural resource was, like oligarchs. So I have oligarchs there are 7 spies, and the rest are not. And my goal is to have 3 spies all in the seats of the 3 natural resource industries, or 4 between all 7 seats of power. Putin's job is to make it to the end of the game. Let's call it 7 rounds. It doesn't matter how many rounds it was. Okay. So at the beginning of the game, I roll 4 dice behind Gorky Park. Again, thematic reasons. And I seed the board, right? Here. Some are spies from the West, and some are not. They're allied to Putin. And, oh yes, very much, Zivko, there are mysterious suicides. And it's called Open Window. Putin takes the first turn. He rolls 3 dice. And based on what he rolls, he can do one of 3 things. He can examine a block. So, A, is this person loyal or are they a spy? On a different roll, he can just flat out exile any 7 of them, whether he has information or not. Or the last thing is, and there is it starts with a DEF, and I can't remember the word, and I'm just a big dumb Marine, and I can't think of it. It basically means to kill them, push them out a window. Defenestrate or something like that. Dumb. Anyway. So, you roll the dice and you choose one of the things. Now, if you examine and it's a spy, you know he's a spy. And if he's loyal, he puts a marker so it's not a memory game in a sense that I know that person is loyal to me. Okay. So, he can choose to exile random or something, maybe he has some information about him. And same with pushing him out a window. And once they're out the window, that's it. I have 7 spies. When he's done with this turn, we then fill any vacant seats, and he chooses from his friends and family, some of which I have seated with spies, maybe. And defenestrate. That's it. All right, thank you. And so he seeds them. Okay. Then he asks, have you won? And again, do I have 3 in the natural resource seats or 4 total? No, I don't. Okay. So now I roll my dice, but I roll my dice secretly. He doesn't get to see what I roll. And then I have a number of choices. I can either put out bad rumors. Bad rumors are, maybe I just have a really bad spy. Maybe he called Langley, CIA, from a Moscow phone. And he has a rumor that, this guy might be a spy. Or I could put out bad intel to make him think that, like a false rumor. So depending on what I roll, I get to put those out. In addition to that, I can recall somebody that might be in trouble of getting thrown out a window. Or I can seed more spies, train more spies. Again, I'm limited to 7. And so I do that. Then Putin goes, back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. It's the very last round of the game. This is, Brooks and I were playing. I was playing as the West. He was playing as Putin. While we're doing this, Sebastian Bay is watching and everything, and this is cool. And obviously, Robert, which he had an accent that seemed Eastern European. I don't want to make any assumptions here. But definitely had an accent from that part of the world. And so it very much had a tongue-in-cheek, vibe to it. But it also was really clever. While this is going on, Jason Matthews comes and sits down next to me, and he's just watching. This is what Jason does. He is super quiet, and he just watches. And he's so kind, and we'll get there. So we're going back and forth, It's the 7th round. I'm not going to win. However, Brooks exiles or throws out, defenestrates a couple of guys, and he seeds them both with spies. And so he looks at me and says, "Did you win? This is the end of the game." And I said, "Yes, twice." And the reason is he put 2 more out there, one of which completed the natural resource, and I had a 4th one out there he just placed. And it was one of those really laugh out loud, really, and we had a crowd around. It It was a lot of fun. And dude had just designed this the night before, and it was a silly little, but really ingenious, clever little mini game. So then Robert's like, hey, can I get your thoughts on it? And so we gave feedback. Like, my side definitely had more agency, and it felt like Putin's side didn't have as much agency in it, and it felt very random, which totally fair. And he's like, okay, good. All right, appreciate it. So now I look over and I feel a lot more comfortable now with Jason Matthews. Again, we have interacted prior to me going to the convention, but didn't know each other. Like we'd never met. But after the night before with the Twilight Struggle and just talking, I felt a lot more comfortable with him. So I was like, hey, Jason, you watch this. You want to give any kind of feedback? And Robert clearly doesn't know who Jason is, Jason Matthews. And I was like, Jason, tell him who you are. And like, not like I need to, you know it. And he's like, I designed Twilight Struggle, and his eyes like got huge. And, but then Jason goes and he said, look, let me start. That is really clever. That is really well done. There's really a lot here that is really great. He's saying he heard what Brooks said, and he said, yeah, maybe there's a communal dice pool, and Putin drafts first and then leaves certain dice, and maybe there's a way to mitigate. He said there's a number of ways that you could do it, but thinking about that, and Robert's just scribbling all this down, and it was just awesome to see somebody like Jason Matthews, who's so accomplished and has such a, track record, but is a really big deal, and take the time to talk to the student. And it was so nice about it. It was cool. It was a cool moment, and it was a fun game to play. It was a not a throwaway, but it's a micro game, right? And it was 10, 15 minutes, but it was just a cool experience, how all that went. And so that was fun. All right. So that's open Windows. And then we have about an hour and a half left before we got to leave. And when we had played Night Witches back on Friday, while we were playing it, David Thompson and Liz Davidson had this other game that was very, very, very early prototype. You could tell just from the graphics or lack thereof, and like clip art type things, whatever. Out on the table, and James and I saw it, and we're like, what is this grid? It looked really interesting. But okay, and they're like, oh, this is our second baby. It's like super, super early, whatever. And so we walked over there, and they were sitting by it, and we're like, hey, can we play it? Yeah. So, okay. So I walked over. It wasn't with James at this point. I apologize. And then this guy, Tor, was sitting there. And they're talking, and I was like, hey, do you mind if I join? And sure, okay. So sit down. And I finally looked at Tor, and I was like, hey, I'm Edward. I run Heavy Cardboard. Nice to meet you. I said, I've heard a lot about you, and I heard a lot of people singing your praises, but I don't exactly understand why. Like, did you create Vassal? Or like the way, like, Drew Worley was singing his praises. Liz and David were talking about him. And there were other people that were like, oh, Tor, thank you so much. And I'm like, what did this guy do? Like, what is he? And he's very quiet, very humble. And he's like, are you familiar with Rally the Troops? And I'm thinking to myself, is this a game? Is this right? And again, idiot. And I'm like, no. And they're like, think Board Game Arena, but for war games. And I'm like, oh, wow, okay. And there's a handful of games on there and all of this. And so I'm like, oh, okay, cool. That's awesome. And he did it for free. And awesome. Okay. So then there is their prototype of what they're calling, it's a working title, Dame Blanche. I believe it's the White Lady, I think is what it translates to. And it's about, again, it's similar to Night Witches. in that it's a bag building game and a resource management and the way that works. But the theme is World War I, Austria. There is a spy network that you are running and having to scenario-based thing that you are trying to avoid capture and getting and carrier pigeons, homing pigeons. So it's the scenarios are the scenario that we played, or the right now it is three scenario games. The one we played, one scenario of 3, and this is about carrier pigeons. And what it is the scenario 1 was you have to acquire the carrier pigeons. The second scenario was about training the carrier pigeons. The third one is about sending the carrier pigeons out on a mission. Okay, that's awesome. So then it's the game about that, but it's a resource management bag builder. And it was really, really clever. It's really early, but it had some really, really cool push your luck aspects, but also priority management, as well as the resource management with your spy cells. You have 4 different cells. They don't know each other, and then you have one spy leader or a ringleader. The ringleader knows all of them, but they don't know each other. So that if they get captured, they can't tell on each other, but they can always tell on the ringleader. If the ringleader gets captured and interrogated, the game ends. You lose. You can lose part of your spies, but you're motivated to have spies from different networks go out on missions together. But once they've made contact, now they know each other. So if they get interrogated, they can tell on each other, which bad, but also good because it protects your ringleader, because that's how you lose the game. And it's a resource allocation. So time is a resource, and you start with 10 or 20 time, whatever it is, 15. And every action that you take requires a certain amount of time. And then you're pulling out chits out of a bag, or discs, capsules, as it were, to be able to succeed or fail on your various things, ultimately to acquire homing pigeons. And it's clearly early, but the bones are there, and it's really cool. And carrier pigeons, homing pigeons, really? So yeah. So that was that. And then afterwards, again, me being me, I had a confession to David Thompson. I was like, I'm pretty comfortable around David now. Like Liz and I know each other pretty well, and Liz is really good friends with David. So I feel a little bit more at ease and comfortable to be an idiot in front of David, I guess. And so I was like, I got to be honest, David, I didn't realize you designed as many games as you had. And I was like, so the funny thing is, the game I know you from isn't what everybody else knows you from. And the reason is it's postmen or soldiers in postmen's clothing. Or postmen's, I think that's what it's called. And the reason is because Liz was raving about how good this system was, those games. Castle Itty or whatnot is another one, and so I didn't realize until we were putting our little tickets for our giveaway games that I was like, oh, David designed Postman. Oh, duh. So I told him that, and he laughed, and I was like, okay, so how'd you get into designing, right? And so again, like the interview starting, at some point at this point, James had walked up and sitting down, and again, it turns into an impromptu interview of, how he got into designing. And it was really a pretty amazing story of happenstance and also privilege he talked about, which I think is pretty amazing. And then talked about this little known game, Undaunted. And I was like, I didn't realize that was you. And yet, that's clearly his most successful game. My bad. He laughed, but he was kind. And so we're all just chewing the fat, whatever. And then he's like, hey, speaking of these other designers that I was speaking of, I have a game by theirs. It's super light, but I think you'll like it. Okay, cool. Because we talked about I used to play poker for a living and all this stuff. All right. So he broke out this game called Pray Another Day. And it is whimsical. Everybody gets 5 cards, and they're numbered 1 to 5. 1 is a bear, 5 is a mouse. And they kind of like, I think 2's a wolf, 3's a lynx, 4's an owl, and 5's a mouse. We were playing at 5 players. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 players. Everybody gets a hand of 5 cards. And everybody secretly is going to play 1 card in front of them. And then he's going to start at the top of the food chain. Bear. Who played a bear? If multiple players have played an animal, they're out. They scare each other away. But if only one player plays the animal that's called, again, starting in food chain order, it can then go eat something else. So, bear. If I'm the only one that played bear. I say owl. Anybody that played an owl is now out of the game because I ate the owl. Cool. Then we go on to the next. We play another one and everybody know. Now, those that are out. So maybe now we're down to 3-handed. I play, but everybody knows that I can't have played a bear because I played a bear last hand or last round. And you play until only one player's left. The winner of the hand, 2 points, and the survivors get 1 point. So we do that over and over until one player has 10 points. I think 5 points. 5 or 10, doesn't matter. James and I were teaming up, and then it became okay, David, what do you think I played? And it came down to just he or I at the very end, and I was able to sneak in a win, and it was, hilarity ensued. It was just a fun time. It was, the artwork is great. The play, it was a very, very, very clever little, very simple, but very clever game. So definitely recommend checking that out. Pray Another Day. So yeah. Yeah. And then we got on the train. We were coming home. It was supposed to be a 7-hour, 45-minute train ride from DC up here. And we got stopped for an hour and a half outside New London, Connecticut because of a signaling issue. Look, I'm all about keeping the train safe, but it's after midnight. We're waiting for an hour and a half. I was supposed to be home at 1:15. Didn't get home till after 3. That was rough. But James and I both signed up for Rally the Troops and played a game of Votes for Women on there. And it really is. It enforces the rules and walks you through. Like you can play async, you can play at the same time, which is what we were doing, back and forth. Highly recommend. If you play on Board Game Arena or 18xx.games and you want a war game version, and Vassal is a bridge that you're like, nope, just not gonna. And again, it enforces the rules. Rally the Troops, go Google it. Highly recommended. There's not a ton of games on there yet, but they're getting added. And it was awesome. It was a great experience. So highly recommend. So well done, Tor. You got a new fan and a new 2 new users out of it. So well done, you. And see, Kevin says, yeah, Rally Troops is so good. Exactly. All right. Now, we also played San Juan on the way down. Funny story. We took the Acela down. The Acela is kind of the express train. It takes 1 less hour and there's less stops. Highly recommend it. It's a little bit more expensive, but it was the only one that was available to us, so we took it down there. Definitely recommend it, though. It's just a better way to go. No, did not feel. I had no clue there was an earthquake until we were on the way home yesterday and somebody said that. I was like, wait, what? Apparently it was the second earthquake in this part of the country in the last 30 years. It was 4.8. It was small. Not a lot of earthquakes up here. Did not feel it. Had no clue. Yeah, rally troops and tour. Fantastic for the hobby. Totally agree. So we're on our way down. James is across the aisle from me. And there's I don't know, late 20s, early 30s dude sitting next to me. And James and I are talking and everything. And the guy can't help but overhear. And he's like, oh, you guys play board games. Me and my friends do. We play this game called Codenames. And he's like, I think the designer is Czech, maybe. It's Vladl, Vlad. I was like, oh. And I don't know how to pronounce his name proper. I get it. But I was like, oh, Vlada. Really nice guy. Extremely broad design base. And does amazing work, talking about like he designs like super light games like Codenames and all the way like Through the Ages and like Dungeon Pets and whatever. So we're talking to this guy and, you know, and so like, oh yeah, so we're going to this board game convention, this and that. He's like, they have conventions? And so it was cool. And James is like, hey, most of the games I brought with me are 2-player for the trip, but I did bring San Juan. Do you want to play? And he's asking the guy to my right. And you could tell the dude was a little intimidated by us because obviously, you know, experienced gamer. And we're like, look, if you don't want to play, don't feel obligated, but I'm pretty sure you can handle it. And we're just here to have fun and whatever. And I was like, hey, if you want, you could just watch us play. And he's like, no, I'll give it a try. All right, cool. So we have our folding tables down and teaching him how to play San Juan. And amazing teacher. James won 33. He took second, 32. I took third at 31. So amazing teacher. That was great. Turned him on to the game. He's like, that was great. I was like, I know, right? And then we talked about, so San Juan is the card game of this other board game called Puerto Rico, which also was turned into another card game called Race for the Galaxy that is impenetrable iconography-wise, but I did make a video that kind of clarifies did a pretty great teaching video, just saying. And, but yeah, so that was great. So that was a lot of fun. And then after that, we played, just James and I played 13 minutes, and I melted the world down, so I apologize. That didn't go well. Then we played The Hunt, and it's about the Admiral Graf Spee that got sunk, I think, in 1939 down in Uruguay. And art imitating life, the Graf Spee was sunk by yours truly. So that was cool. It was a cool like chain of events that led to that in the game, and that was fun. That was a cute little hidden movement deduction game as well. And oh, hey, wow, Jason's here. Hi, Jason. Great meeting you. Enjoying your discussion of Vimar. I've only played once, but it's stuck in my head. Ooh, it really is cool. It really is a good game. And Jason, if you watch the rest of this, I talk about the discussion that we all had on Twilight Struggle that literally like being a fly on the wall, listening to the discussion of Space Racetrack, Space the card, and how all that was between you, a car, and Jason Carr. That was awesome. That was a highlighted trip for me, legit. So thank you. That was cool. I hope you can make it a heavy con. That would be cool. And I definitely want to sit down, like, chat and talk about the Twilight Struggle series. So anyway, and the new game. So we'll do that. Yeah, exactly. Seattle Sasquatch says, always nice when you teach and they pick it up and they beat you. Hey, great teacher. So yay, I'm happy with that. That was awesome. Yeah, Vimar was epic. There were 2 simultaneous games of Vimar going on. at Circle DC on Friday. So that was cool. Their game ended prematurely twice. Ours ended barely prematurely once. And we were like some of the last people. By the way, Kevin, thanks for not closing down before we finished Vimar. I appreciated that. So that, and then I talked about that. Yeah, so that's all the games I played. Now, James had some questions for me. Here, let me look. Most fun game playing it. Like, I was thinking about this last night, and I was like, the experience was probably Pray Another Day, but it wasn't my favorite game. It was just the fun experience, but that was because the people around the table. You know what I mean? Like, plus, it's a lighter game, so you have the end of the day, end of the con, or whatever, like, come down, whether you're playing Wavelength or, like, later games lead themselves to that. So that was probably the most fun game, but, I mean, hi, Jess. Like, I didn't play a bad game. Like, I didn't have a bad experience. And that surprises the hell out of me, honestly. Like, all of these were really enjoyable for different reasons. Night Witches, because the Euro player in me really liked the resource management aspect, the little bit of push your luck, while also getting the theme of the Soviet or the Russian Night Witches. Great. Vimar, I mean, I've been on this kick lately, right? I've been wanting to play it. I think I finally got the itch scratched so I can take a break from it now. But that was, and the history of it, and like, that was enriching. That was awesome. Arcs, I got to hang out with Cole. I met Chris and Wendy, and it very much feels like a Cole Worley game. You choose your own, like the way the scoring mechanisms work and everything else. It felt like a Cole game, which I love. John Company, Pax Premier, etc. That was wonderful. Plus, it was the most polished because it was actually a production copy. And that, other than Pray Another Day, were the only two production games that I played. Coast Watchers, that new mechanism, and I love it is a really obscure part of the war, of World War II that I had no clue of, or of, like, with Blackbeard, less true historical, and the Verdun one, like those, that's so my wheelhouse, and that just seemed really cool. Plus being able to sit with Volko was not terrible. And Bill Simone was a blast to play with, and everybody else that was in that game. Just everybody was really friendly, and we just had a lot of fun. The Twilight Struggle, again, being intimidated as all hell with the two Jasons, and obviously another professional in a car, but also that fly in the wall experience was awesome. Plus, I held my own, thank you very much. Sure, I got housed at the very end there, but that was a cool experience, and I didn't embarrass myself. So, and the biggest thing for feedback that I could give, if you're a new player on Twilight Struggle, is there's less to wrap your head around. Is from a, oh my God, there's a lot of spaces on that Twilight Struggle board. There's less so here. But if you're an experienced, so it's less intimidating in that regard. If you're an experienced Twilight Struggle player, there's going to be enough familiarity here, but it's way different. And there's going to be depth here that surface level I'm not going to see that you're going to see as a more experienced Twilight Struggle player, but that is you're going to have to work at. And so again, simpler, not less than. And I loved what Akar said about that. I thought that was a wonderful experience. Cross Bronx Expressway. I just want to play it more, damn it. Like, it was cool to be able to help out with the development of the Learn to Play. And I'm not complaining. I'm saying it somewhat tongue in cheek from oh my God, I just want it more. Let me play the game. So that's a good thing. But all it did is it whet my appetite. So there's that. And then the ingenuity of open windows and how dude just wrote this up, drew it on a piece of paper the night before. And hearing Jason's feedback to him was just, it was warm and endearing. And also, it was really cool. I mean, it was a clever little mechanism, little game. It really, well done. Seeing a super early prototype of, again, tying this back to Night Witches with the Dame Blanche. And then having the fun of Pray Another Day. And there are, okay, let me tell you where I made an ass of myself or embarrassed myself, or at least I felt like I did. So, all right, let me, give me 1 second here. There you go. I want to make sure I get that right. Okay. So Ray Farrell, didn't realize who he was. Severino, I think that's right. Didn't realize who he was. But the ultimate, so on Saturday, I'm walking around between games, whatever, and I see just a dude. Pause. Sorry. This is a big deal. There were a surprising amount of non-white guys there. That is awesome to see. There were a number of women. There were a number of people of color. There were a number of LGBTQ plus people there, and it was so welcoming, and it was so nice to see that there could be more, but the hobby's healthy. Like, it's really good to see. Oh God, I haven't even talked about Tori Brown. She is the sweetest woman in the world. It was great meeting Tori, and she's funny. And we were cutting up throughout the whole, starting at the ball game all the way through. She's like, and we both like, you a hugger? All right, bring it in. And it was just, I mean, between Liz Davidson, there was, let me get her name. Hold on. Yeah, I wanted to mention that before I got out of here today. So hold on. And I'll also talk about my embarrassing story. There it is. Betsy Joslin. That's it. That is probably, there are 3 designers that I didn't, no. There's more than that. But Betsy Joslin, Ray Farrell, because I didn't realize it, and Vijay Nagara. That's it. Designer. Severio. That's it. Didn't realize who he was. So those 3, like, that was a bummer. That I didn't really get a chance to do much with them. But all that said, amazing diversity in the at the convention. So between designers, developers, game players, awesome. That was good. Can get better, but it's trending in the right direction, and that was great. So here's my embarrassing story. I see just a dude, unassuming. He's wearing a black long sleeve shirt and has a Eagle Globe and Anchor over his chest, says retired So, hey, Marine. So I go over, I say, hey, you're a Marine, Semper Fi. He's like, all right, and all that. And we're talking. And like, hey, I was aviation, I was air wing. He's like, oh, I was grunt, this and that, whatever. And here it is. You ready for it? So are you a designer? Oh. He's like, yeah. I've designed a few games. Oh, cool. He's like, I'm Ben. And I look and it's Ben Hull. It doesn't register. So my bad. Okay. Here, so I'm BGG here, right? And he had, I think it was one of the musket and pike games, right? Or bayonet and musket. That's it. He had Banish All Their Fears on the table. Didn't register. Right? I'm like, oh, okay. And then he's like, yeah, Fields of Fire. And I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm an idiot. I said, I'm so sorry. I should have known this. And he laughs and he's like, no, it's totally fine. Like, you don't need to know me. And I'm like, yeah. So Fields of Fire, Gustav, This Occurs Civil War, Sweden Fights On, Under the Lily Banners, Won by the Sword. And I'm like, I should have known that. So yeah, I felt like an idiot. And Meeple Lady was there. Yeah, I mentioned her earlier. Hi, Jess. So yeah, that was, and so the next day, when I was saying bye, I was like, hey, Ben, let's sit down and play something next time. I'm sorry. Again, he laughed and he was like, no, it's totally fine. But he was very gracious. And it was just, yeah. Jamie and from Foster the Meeple. There are more. I don't want to, like, and there were a number of other women, like I said there. So, yeah. Anyway. Yes. Got to get you some board game designer flashcards. We laughed. James said the same thing. So don't laugh. After the meetup on Thursday night, I actually went home and, like, stalked people on Twitter so I could, like, put faces to names. But not everybody's on Twitter. So, anyway. So, the other thing, we went to the baseball game, the Nats game, on Thursday. We had, like, an all-inclusive seats behind home plate. There was a buffet. I've never had that. That was ridiculous, so thank you. Also, Kevin's a season ticket holder, and he got offered the opportunity to throw out the first pitch. And he was like, I've done it before. Does anybody want to do it? I was like, uh-huh. So there were 6 of us that volunteered to distribute. And he rolled a 6-sided die. He rolled me. And I'm like, oh, my God. I get to throw out the first pitch at a ball game? Are you? Oh, my God. So we get there early for the buffet and the whole 9 yards. And unfortunately, the Nats, like, media guy was like, no, sorry, we can't let you give that away. That is strictly for the name that is on the season ticket holder. I was like, hey, I'm totally fine. Like, as I'm eating tomahawk ribeye. And I'm like, yeah, I'm totally, don't worry about it. Like, I'm stuffing chili dogs in my face. I'm like, totally fine. So it didn't get to, but that was okay. I got to sit behind the home plate and watch Aroldis Chapman throw fastballs and sliders. It was the closest I've ever been to the field, and that was amazing. So yeah, that was badass. That was, yeah. And Kevin gave me the ball. He did. He threw a 75-mile-an-hour cutter that just caught the outside. So well done, Kevin. The dinner was ridiculous. The food. We did a tour of the city, walking and scootering safely, mind you, scootering. We went to a bunch of the mall monuments, like all the big ones that you would expect. It was gorgeous. The Cherry Blossom Festival's going on. It was an amazing week. So there we go. Oh, there you go. Talia Rosen, designer of First Monday in October. again, there were a number, so that is wonderful. And I didn't meet what feels like a half, just because need an extra day, Kevin, next year. Just saying. All right, I gotta go pick up a kid. Hopefully y'all found value, or you enjoyed that, and so I wanted to share this with y'all because A, it's a privilege to be able to do what I do for a living, thanks to all the patrons, as well as the support from publishers through sponsored streams. Could not do this otherwise. And so with this privilege, I want to be able to share it. I can't bring all of you. I don't go to a lot of conventions, but the handful that I do go to, I want y'all to be able to live vicariously through me. So if you enjoy this, tell me. Because in 3 days, I'm going to the Gathering of Friends. And that is a who's who, but really of Euro designers, kind of, mostly. That's 11 days in Niagara, and it's incredible. But if you don't like this, or this isn't humble brag. Again, I want to share this with y'all. If y'all like to hear about that, I'll do this again when I come back, as well as all the other stuff. We have a playthrough tonight of City Tricks. We're going to be doing. We have a playthrough of the Brooklyn map of Age of Steam going tomorrow. And then I'm out for effectively 12 days. I'll be at the Gathering of Friends. We going to get the kid, the Eclipse. Be safe. Be kind. Thank you. Hopefully y'all join us for City Tricks tonight. And again, thanks to Kevin and everybody I met. I'm sure there's a number of folks I did not mention by name. There's a number of media that were there as well, and it was just a great time. The train is still the best way to go. I just wish it hadn't stopped for 90 minutes in the middle of the night. That would have been great. So, all right. Hopefully you enjoyed that. So thanks, and I'll see you all tonight. Take care, everybody. Actually, there.